Hi, welcome all. Welcome to yet another edition of Women Writers Fest. In 2024, children's literature continues to evolve with new trends, themes that reflect the changing interests of young readers. Today, the themes are not limited to school or their lives at home, but they have gone beyond, and we see the changing themes like body positivity, gender identity, and so much more. To discuss more about this, we have authors Divya Anand with Ritu Vaishnav and Tanvi Bhat. So first up, Ritu Vaishnav is the author of the best-selling picture book Pink and Blue. Her second book, Inside a Dark Box, was honored with the Publishing Next Award for Children's Book of the Year. She is also the co-founder of Cool School, a bookstore with a special focus on children's book. Before turning her interest into literature, she was a journalist working with Times of India, Indian Express, and India Today. Next up is Divya Anand. When Divya is not thinking up ways to get into trouble, she writes books about big girls with big opinions and bigger ideas. Her book, Misfit Madhu, was part of the Parag Honor List 2023 and also won the 2023 Neve Book Award for Junior Readers. She has also written two books for adults like Dare Eat That and Written in the Stars. And finally, Tanvi Bhat. Tanvi is a Mumbai based illustrator and author who has created numerous books for publishers like Penguin RH, Pratham Books, Duckbill, and Tulika Books, to name a few. Working primarily with watercolors and wash, she brings to the delightful characters and vibrant worlds inspired by everyday moments. Thank you everyone for doing this, and we are so glad to have you here at SheThePeople TV.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you for having us.
So to begin with, a few months ago, someone suggested me to switch my career and get into teaching. They claimed teaching young kids will make you very happy. There's an unfiltered joy by just being in midst of kids. I want to know your stories. I want to know how and what inspired you to get into children's writing. Tanvi, if we can start with you.
So I think I floundered my way into this career because I thought I wanted to tell stories for children even when I was a teenager. And so I got into animation, and somehow that never panned out for me because even on my animation jobs and when I was doing my master's in animation, I was constantly just doing drawings and I wouldn't want to do the labor of animation. I realized that animation is a big labor oriented process and illustration has instant gratification. And so I kind of pivoted into illustration. And then once I found children's books, I thought that this is what I've always wanted to do. But I didn't actually have that sense of purpose in my early 20s to know exactly what I wanted to do. And I floundered my way in here. And now I'm happy here. So it has been a really fun journey for me to discover.
Okay, Divya?
Yeah, I think similarly, I didn't really have any thought as far as writing children's books goes. It's not that I grew up wanting to write books for children. I did, of course, I've always been a voracious reader. So I have been one of those people who got into reading because of books that I've read when I was younger. And there are certain authors who had a very large, I would say, impact on my life. But very honestly, I actually work in tech. In fact, I still do. And I didn't even know if I wanted to be an author. I just used to write a lot on the side to, just get the angst out of my system on a day to day. And then I happened to stumble into writing books because of my first book, Dairy That, which was actually a nonfiction based off of my husband's quest to go eating bizarre foods from around the world. And once I wrote one book, then I had other ideas that I wanted to explore. And I Hate My Curly Hair actually came out because I myself have curly hair, of course. And when I was growing up, I think what really impacted me was the fact that curly hair was seen as unideal, right? So even, for example, when I started working, having curly hair by default was seen as, being messy, not professional, and a lot of those things. And I wanted to break out of that. And that's where the idea for that book came about. And after I wrote that is when I realized that I enjoyed writing children's books. also realized while this book came out in the peak of the pandemic, a lot of the sessions that I did around I Hate My Curly Hair were actually done virtually. But even with that, I realized that I liked that whole interaction. I liked how it was when, you talk about a book or you do an activity, and sort of the reactions you get, the questions that you get. I really enjoyed all of those. And I think even now, while I have written for adults, I did write Written in the Stars after I Hate My Curly Hair. I think most of the ideas I get on a day-to-day basis for books tend to more veer towards children's books than adults at this point.
Okay, how lovely. You did make that switch, but I am still pondering upon if I should switch or not. Ritu?
Well, my journey, I mean, both the books happened by accident. I have also been a voracious reader ever since I was a child. I always had my nose in a book. And although reading and writing were always very much a part of my daily life ever since I was a kid, I never really consciously thought of writing these books out. Both the books, in fact, were written for my son because these were conversations that I wanted to have with him. And I have a bookstore. So back then, at least, now you'll see a lot of books on these topics. But back then, when I wanted to have this conversation with my son, I did not find the right sort of book. So I wrote both for him, and somebody happened to see them in Penguin, and they said, why haven't you shown these to us? Just submit it, and that's how the journey began. So it was really quite by accident.
Okay, how nice. So I have read Inside a Dark Box. I also read I Hate My Curly Hair, and I read Muni Monster. So all the three books have a similar theme. It is about anger, it is about detachment, and these characters, they are primarily fighting those issues. Uh, for for Mishti, she's really afraid that she's being replaced in Tamma's life. For the
Yeah.
girl in curly hair, she's struggling with her identity. She's struggling with the acceptance. And for Inside a Dark Box, it just it shows how difficult it is to live in their own head. So while these themes are very much relevant and they need to be talked upon, there's it needs a sense of sensitivity, which your characters and your illustrations bring about. So what is your approach? What is your creative process when you're writing them? And uh, did you ever feel a detachment once the characters were written and published and gone through? If anyone of you would like to start.
I can start. So I think for me, I never went out to say that, oh, I want somebody to get this sort of lesson out of the book, or, I want them to feel that it's okay or anything like that. I think when I first came up with the idea of I Hate My Curly Hair, it actually came out of a workshop that I attended on writing children's picture books. And it was one that was run by Anushka Ravi Shankar, and I think the biggest advice I have had from her, whenever she has done a workshop or even otherwise when she talks about writing, is her approach to writing books is that, children want to have fun, right? So write something that's fun, and don't worry so much about like trying to give them some moral or some learning out of it. And I think that is great advice for anyone who writes books, right? So even when I wrote I Hate My Curly Hair, while there was of course an aspect of representation, because I said, I have not seen that many characters with curly hair. It wasn't so much about, oh, I want you to accept your curly hair, that's why this is the story. It was about how can I have fun with it, which is why you will see it. And the illustrator, I think Rujuta did a fantastic job. Even today, right, I have a 3-year-old now. When she looks at the book, she has a lot of fun identifying what are these random things crawling around in the hair. And it's not like she's saying, oh, if you have curly hair, you're going to have a nest in it, or you're going to have ladybugs in it. But it's just ways to have fun with it. And then even the way that the girl in the book sort of accepts her hair, it's a fun way for it to happen, right? It's not like she's having some moment where someone is coming and telling her it's cool. She just gets herself out of a sticky spot with it, and then she changes her mind. So I think that's been the approach that at least has worked for me. And it's not so much about, oh, I want you to take this out of it. And different children have taken different things out of the book, very honestly. And as long as they're having fun, I think that's what makes me happy.
Yeah, and I want to come back to that particular point of taking lessons. I want to hear Tanvi, I want to hear Ritu, what are your thoughts?
You want to go first?
Tanvi?
No, I said Ritu, please go first.
Okay, all right. So, honestly, like I was saying earlier, both my books did not, the original thought was not that I was going to publish them or that I was going to send these stories out into the world. They were very personal conversations with my son. So, and they were both born out of, both books had their own triggers. So they were written very quickly, because somebody made a comment about how he's a boy and he should not cry, and I did not want him to absorb that, and a couple of other messages that were coming in, and he was still in play school. So, my first instinct was to look for a book in a catalog, and I did not find something specifically addressing that. So I just wrote something, and he was in a play school. So, I wanted to talk about gender stereotypes because I realized, one day he came home and he said, Mama, his favorite colors were pink and blue. And one day he came home and he said, I need to throw all my pink things because pink is a girl's color. And Mama, you should not wear blue. So I was shocked that these things come up when they're 2.5, 3 years old. And the conversations that we have about gender stereotypes are when we are adults or we have them with teenagers. So, the language to have this conversation with a 2.5-year-old was not there. Or at least I did not find it. Now you have a lot of great books that are doing similar things, but this was like way back 2012. I did not find anything, so I just wrote something quickly, and and it became a book. And even Inside a Dark Box was born out of my own experience. I had a very long journey with postpartum depression, and there were things that I wanted to explain to my son about, why I'm not able to be as present as I would have liked to be. So and again, because it was a very personal journey, the intent to publish was not there. But conversations happened, and one realized that there are so many people who are on this journey and they don't recognize depression when it first hits them, and it resonated with some people who saw it. So again, the idea was not to publish it, but it just happened.
Okay, and that's the thing with kids' books. No, sometimes they go on to resonate with the adults also. So that's a wonderful thing.
I just want to say one more thing here. Inside a Dark Box was not essentially, when it came out, it was not targeted at children. It was supposed to be a very simple book about depression or about mental health, about understanding what that struggle is like. So it was not really aimed at children. I was actually surprised when people picked it up for young children. And similarly, Pink and Blue was meant for children. But I have signed a lot of copies where teachers have picked it up for their parents or for adults in their lives. So it's surprising the journey that a book takes once it's out there.
Yeah, and that I would say that is storytelling when you're not actually writing something for someone. It's when you have a story to tell, it doesn't matter who that story is for. Whoever gets drawn to it will just pick it up on their own, and it will resonate with them regardless of age or gender or whatever. Like that, we don't really create things for an audience. We just create things, and then whoever likes it likes it. In fact, for Money Monster as well, I know that the author had a story about a child, but she hasn't specifically written it for a child. And I know this because Madhurima is I worked with her on my second book. Money Monster was our second book together, and we did another book called My Grandmother's Masterpiece before that. Now, Money Monster is based on her Munna Masi, who lives with her, who does have all of the disabilities that the book talks about. And she has done this wonderful thing where when I went to Calcutta, she made us meet because she said, I'm writing a story about her and I want you to illustrate it. And I want you to meet her and interact with her so that you can feel the joy that her personality is. Because when you read a story about someone with a certain condition, it paints a dark picture very typically. But she was like the kind of joy that Munamasi brings in our life. You have to like meet her and experience that, and only then will you be able to capture it. And I'm so glad she did this exercise, because as soon as I got my manuscript, I knew exactly what to do with it. And to me, the child character kind of happens on a default level, because I have created so many books, and like creating a child's character isn't really a struggle. It's always a challenge, but it's not a struggle. But creating someone like Munni Monster's character was like a brilliant challenge for me. And having met her, it was even more rewarding making something like that. I always wanted to have joy. I never wanted to take joy out of that story because it's written with a lot of joy as well.
Yeah, and the illustration where she's confronting her ma, her and her tamma,
Yeah,
you can see the anger, but towards the end when she hugs Munni and Munni Monster,
yeah,
and she's like,
yeah.
okay, now I understand
That
what is
sort
it.
of is-
It's kind
yeah,
of a
yeah.
growing up. So like suddenly this 11, 12-year-old child has grown up into a lady, and
Exactly.
now she's understanding the emotions. So it's
Yeah.
lovely.
And I love when someone writes a character with real emotions. And anger depiction in a children's book is just one of my favorite themes, because children do have a lot of anger, and it's not very common to read that. So
Yeah.
I really enjoy a story where anger is a central theme.
Yeah. Now I want to come to something that Divya touched upon, that should we take out the lesson? Should children just not keep it for the entertainment? Even as a reader, do you feel there's this burden on books, on taking out the lessons, on taking out the themes, on and if so, if did you see it as a challenge? Does it challenge your creativity that you have to put down some lessons into it, so put down a particular running theme, or just keep it for the entertainment sake? Yeah.
Uh,
It,
and can I
yeah.
first, because I have actually struggled with exactly what you are saying. I had written this story, which has bounced around with many publishers because no one wants it. Because it's a story about a girl who's a nose digger, and she has a perfectly good explanation about why she's a nose digger. And because I have not resolved, or I have not broken her habit in the end, everyone's like, this is absurd. You need to like teach her why she should stop digging her nose. And I'm like, no, but she's not there yet. She's not, she has perfectly good explanations as to why she thinks she's cleaning her nose. So why should I introduce a lesson? If she grows up to be a nose digger, she grows up to be a nose digger. I don't want to incorporate that lesson in it, but everyone that I've shown this book to is like, no, that is disgusting. Please change your ending. So this is something that I am struggling with, because I want to write a book without a lesson, but I don't have takers for it.
I think just one thing on that one, Tanvi, because you brought this up, I would say that if you read this book, which came out from Duckbill recently, right? This I Won't Wash My Hair by Aparna Kapoor. I don't think the
Yeah.
resolution in that is a resolution that parents would particularly want. Like I actually give to
What
that book one,
I
and,
want to
the person's parent was like, I hope she doesn't, come away saying, this is what I want to do, because the kid in that book is perfectly happy, right? She's like, I want my hair to be filled with all kinds of grub, and I don't ever want to wash it. But I think the challenge that I have seen when it comes to this kind of concept is, while in an ideal world, I think those of us who write, and even potentially a lot of the people who are publishing, don't want a lesson or don't want to have that kind of resolution. I think the challenge that comes into it is that with children's books, ultimately, the largest, say, sales channel, at least what I have heard from my
yeah.
publishers, is in schools, right? And there's a lot of gatekeeping that happens there. For
Yeah.
example, I hate my curly hair. There have been a lot of times where schools have refused I hate my curly hair for school sessions only because the title has the word hate in it. So people have this problem with the word hate. So they're like, oh, no, you can't give I hate my curly hair because the title means we cannot keep it in the school library, right? And to that, my point has always been that children feel really strongly. If you went and
Yes.
asked a 5-year-old who doesn't like something about themselves, what is it that you don't like? They're not going to give it to you in this very, polite manner to say, oh, I don't like
Yes.
this or I don't like that. They are going to say, I hate. Or, my 3-year-old,
Yes.
she says, I don't want. And the don't want is very strong.
Yes.
So if
Yes.
you start trying to look at it with an adult lens and say, oh, this is not appropriate or that word is not
Yes.
appropriate, then we are just keeping them from those books. So in an ideal world, I think like the nose digger story, right? I'm happy to go show it to my kid, even if she's digging her
Yeah.
nose. There's no resolution. It's fun. But
It's
I
fine.
think that's where like some of the market
In the real
economics
world.
might come into it to
Uh,
stop it going out. But if you ask me, I mean, it's perfectly fine. And you dig your nose, you dig your nose. I mean, at some point, hopefully you grow out of it. Or I know adults who haven't. But that's just the
yeah.
thing.
That's exactly what actually, the theme that I wanted to mention in my story is this girl who has gumption. So the theme was not nose digging, but the theme was gumption. There's someone who just believes in what she believes in, and even if that doesn't agree with people, she still sticks by it. And she's not in a family which says no, it's a rule, you can't do it, because that's
Mm.
just killing kind of conversation around a certain subject. So I thought that nosing was just one of the things which could be like a thing to string it together. But I wanted to write about gumption. Maybe I've not come there yet. So as a writer, maybe I need to evolve and uh, have my theme come out more clearly, and then maybe people will. I remember not to put hate in my story
I mean,
as
how you
well.
can put it? There are people. By the way, kids
They
love the
come
fact that
out.
it's their age. The problem is librarians may not always like it.
Librarians have problem.
Yes,
So
sir.
I'm just
Yeah, Ritu, please.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just gonna say here that from an author's perspective, I think it's just you can only put out your story in your words. So you have to be
Yeah.
authentic to the story that you have, what you want to say, and you have to be authentic in terms of your voice. You cannot, if you try to do it for other people, or if you try to do it for the market, if you try to do it for sales or something, the lack of authenticity shows,
Mm.
and
Mm.
it does not work. That I'd say as an author, but also as a curator for a bookstore, I would say that I particularly don't like books that are very preachy for children. I love humor, and I think if there is a message, it can be very subtly included. But
Mm.
if it's particularly preachy, in my personal opinion, I don't think it works.
Mm.
You have a good story, and you say it well, and that's all you need to do.
Yeah, it takes all the fun out of it to have like a preachy story.
Absolutely, absolutely. You have to make it fun. With children, I think the message is lost the moment the fun is lost.
Yeah.
Agree.
If they're bored, it's gone. They're not paying attention. So, it doesn't matter how beautiful your message in the end is. If
Yeah.
you've not had fun with it, children are not enjoying it, and
But
they've
once they
blocked them.
bet that there's a lesson here, they switch off immediately.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So, are there any other elements that make their experience a memorable one? Their reading experience, because there's so much tech. There are also books that have a lot of tech involved in it. So, are there any other experience? Are there any elements that make it a memorable one in your experience?
I very strongly feel that to connect with children, first and foremost, you have to have fun with what you're saying. I
Hmm.
think, I'm very big on that word. And I think that is what resonates with the child. Humor done well.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I don't think anything works better than humor done well. And I think
absolutely.
honesty and authenticity is something that works very well with children. They pick on pretentiousness, and they will not connect with the book.
They have a
So if
real
your
filter.
character if your character is honest, if you are honest, then children will connect with the book. Also illustrations, I think, you know again, having fun with illustrations, incorporating some humorous elements here and there, or some fantasy magical elements here and there, something beyond the text for them to notice, sprinkle your page with little things that they can notice. I think these things work really well with children.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I want to come to both Tanvi and Divya. I want to know what has been the most rewarding experience so far, and yet it being challenging yet rewarding. How has your journey been so far? Anyone?
Summarizing. So I think recently we did this book about Jamini Roy, the
Mm.
artist. And usually when we do a picture book or when I do like a chapter book or whatever, you get a manuscript, you sit in your dungeon and you paint for a month and you don't really talk to anyone, and then you send it out and the book is out. And most times there's no launch, or it's just like the book is out. For me, it was a very different story because it was a team. We worked with a team. There was a book designer, an illustrator, author, publisher. We would meet on a weekly basis. And there was a lot of research that went into creating this book because Jamini Roy is an artist, and we had to depict sort of fictional but sort of real version of what his childhood could have been and what could have been a pivotal moment in his life that made him want to be an artist, but from a child's perspective. So when we were creating this, I realized that I didn't really know what rural Bengal in the 1930s would look like, or not even 1930s, earlier than that, like the early 1900s looked like, and what he would wear and what the relationship would be like and what the ground looked like. So I did a lot of research for it. I ended up speaking to his granddaughter to ask what their childhood was like, what he was like as a grandfather. I spoke to art historians. I went to this art collector who had hundreds of Jamini Roy paintings in like literally a go down where he would just take it out and dust it and show it to me. So to me, that was like a very challenging thing as well, because it was just not the default way that I've worked for like 12 years. There's the new way of working. I had to teach myself how to use acrylic gouache. I'd never used acrylic medium before, and I'm a self-taught artist. So I like to stick to what I know, what I've taught myself over the last 10 years. This one was a new medium because I felt like watercolors were too fluid and I needed something which was more like solid, because like rural Bengal with like earth and him mushing plants and to make paint. So it needed to be a lot more earthy. So this whole book, like it took me a year to make this book. It had pop-ups and fabrication and all of that. So, when your publisher tells you the world is your oyster, it's a bit like, oh, okay. So what can I do? What can't I do? So it took a year for me to figure that book out and actually put it out. But I was so happy with the outcome because I felt like after a long time, I really grew in leaps and bounds as an artist. It's always great to receive a book where it forces you to grow and forces you to come out of your comfort zone and do something new. So I think that is felt.
How lovely. Divya?
I think for me, each book has been challenging in a different way because what ended up happening, and this was again by not by design, is I wrote 4 books in 4 different genres, and I had no idea what I was doing with each of them. So that way, I think I've learned different things with each of them. But having said that, Misfit Madhu specifically was difficult for me. One, because while I had the concept, because it has a mystery as well, right? So I had to first sit and resolve the mystery in my own head in terms of who did it, why they did it, how to make sure that it's not too easy to guess early on, because the fun is lost if you find out in the first 3 chapters who's done it. You're not going to read the rest of the book, irrespective of what else is there. So I think those aspects were a little challenging. Also because I hadn't written for middle graders before. I still remember, I think the first version of the manuscript that, not really the first version, but the version that I sent to my editor, right? The largest comment she gave me when it came back to me was, these characters don't sound like children. And at the time, by the way, when I wrote it, I didn't have my child. My child was born like when I was writing the book. But she's like, these characters don't sound like children. They're not using words that children of that age would use. And that's when I realized that, I had to do additional research. So what I started doing is I would go stand downstairs near the play area in my apartment when I would take my baby downstairs. And I started listening to kids of that age, right? To see when they're talking to each other, what is the slang they're using? How are they chatting with each other? And then I came up with like this very specific way for each character to talk. And I said, okay, this person is going to talk in this manner. This person is going to talk in that manner. And then I went back and actually changed all of the dialogue person by person. Which I think has really helped the last, because when I eventually sent it out for other kids to read it and all of that, I got a lot of comments on, oh, I really like this person. This character talks like me. How did you think of this character? How did you think of that character? And I think that's where I also pushed myself to think more, because while there was a lot of dialogue, even in Written in the Stars, it was meant for adults, right? And I know how people in corporate talk. So I think by default, I was able to write dialogue which sounded like people in an office very easily, and I didn't give it a second thought. But with the middle grade novel, I had to give it a lot of thought. And I'm now sort of going in that same direction again, because I'm writing a chapter book now, and I'm trying even more, right? I'm like, I can't write long sentences. I have to sort of like write it like somebody in fifth grade would talk, not like somebody who's a grown up would talk. So I think that's been the challenging part. There are a lot of books which touch upon topics where even if, say, a child doesn't understand the full context of what is happening, it gives you enough to have conversation. So I when I read books with my daughter, a lot of times there are books that she likes to read because it looks fun. There's something in the story, even if it's say something which is meant for slightly older kids than her age. I don't really stop her from picking that book up, and then it's not really. It's There's something there where you can have a conversation. For example, she really likes this book Parties Rasam. She doesn't yet fully understand the concept of death. She doesn't really understand what has happened in terms of, the grandmother is dead, but she knows the grandmother has gone away and this person is sad, and that's okay for right now. Maybe a few years from now, I'll explain it more in depth to her, and at that point, she'll understand the depth of the sadness. But even without that, she understands, and she's more anchored on, there is the rasam and the smell of rasam, and you want to make something that your grandmother makes and all of that. So I think the empathy gets developed, and then later on, you can get into the layers of what exactly is happening here, why is it happening, what does it mean, and all of that. And that happens very well with books. I don't think it happens as much potentially with other mediums, because you don't have that space to think, right? In a book, there is that page and you can ask those questions and maybe think a little bit more. And I think that's probably where literature can also sort of help build that ability to think and empathize a little bit more deeply.
That's beautifully said, actually. I think that's why adults enjoy reading as well, because you are reading, but you're reading in your own voice, and your your head is making sense of the story as you're going with your personal space without any external stimuli. That's a really lovely way of thinking about books.
Yeah. So again, this is my last question, and this is for all of you. Are there any recommendations? Are there any books that you go back to and you want to also help the aspiring authors navigate the challenges of writing children's literature? So are there any books or are there any recommendations that you want to convey? Tanvi?
It's a very difficult question, because at all points I have some or the other book that I'm obsessed with. What is on my desk? I'll come back to it if someone has a answer ready. Let me think about mine.
Yeah. Ritu?
So since both my books are picture books, let me just talk about picture books a little more. Um, I, what I would recommend to authors is to read as many picture books and read as diversely as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Different authors bring different things to the table. Um, you know, uh, I mean, some people may not have very good things to say about Dr. Seuss, but I think, people say that the book is filled with a lot of nonsense, but just the way the text rolls off the tongue, it is so much fun, to talk. There's some stories by Julia Donaldson. The way the rhyming works in her books it just works so well. It is not forced. There is Anthony Brown. I think, there is a parallel story that is taking place in pictures. The book is saying something else, and there's something else going on in pictures, which I think is so cleverly done. So read as many authors as you can. Look at the illustrations. Look at the way they've had fun with illustrations. There are, I think in India, we're still not experimenting as much as we can, particularly with illustrations and with text. I feel that there is a lot more scope to do that with fonts, with the
You're
colors.
absolutely
some
true.
Read some books which have fantasy, and look at how they make the pages magical with a little sprinkling of the right kind of colors. It just, magical forests get created. So yeah, I mean, don't stick to one genre or one author or one illustrator. Just read as much and as diversely as possible would be my recommendation.
Yeah, how
That's a
lovely.
great idea.
Yeah. Divya?
Actually, you're absolutely right about that, Ritu, because I think what we are lacking in our publishing scene is the lack of an art director, because we
Yeah.
always a good illustrator, we always have a good author, but you need a book designer who's as crucial a part of creating a book and making it look interesting. Um, and the few books that I've worked on which feel really successful to me have always had an art director.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Divya.
No, so I was going to say, I think similar to what Ritu was saying, I generally read a lot of the genre I'm working on at the moment. So I have in the recent past read a lot of chapter books. But I think for me, again, with chapter books, I think the ones that stand out to me are, again, the ones which are a lot of fun. And, how do you convey like an entire story in barely like 10,000 odd words, right? It's like a 40, 50 page book, and that's about it. And you need to have fun, and everything needs to get wrapped up. I think in India specifically, the ones that I have enjoyed looking at, and these are more early chapter books than the one that I'm writing, are actually all of the ones which are part of the Hook Book series, and that's mainly
Yeah.
because they are that in between a picture book and a chapter book, and there are, and I think most of them are just a lot of fun, right? So a couple
Yeah.
that at least I have read a lot, and the reason I've read them a lot is because my daughter is currently obsessed with them. Bee Gees in the Kitchen by Natasha Sharma, I think it's one of her favorites, and she'll randomly keep asking about Loki Halwa. Or there's, Cyrus the Virus, where there's a lot of, and I think to the point on, having the text also come alive a little bit. The Cyrus the Virus has a little bit of that, because every time the Y comes in the book, there's a different
Yeah.
font. The words are also sort of like, why this, why that, why this, why that, which was a lot of fun when reading as well. And I think those are sort of the books which kind of stand out to me. And even a lot of the whole books like Asha Nemaya's the Magic series is a lot of fun with the girl, and like she's trying to go and get with the aunt and with the family and getting more magical. So I think those are a lot of the ones that I've read a lot of recently, some for personal reasons, the others just to see how the chapter books come together as well. Because international ones there are a lot, but I also try to go back more to what has been done, or more of the other Indian authors, just to see how much have experimented, what have we done, what have we not done yet, to see if we can get more ideas out there as well.
Okay. Tanvi, any thoughts?
I'm always a big fan of Priya Korean. So I'm obsessed with Beauty is Missing. Have any of you read that? It is so stunning.
My daughter loves it.
It is such a good book. I love that she's created a book where there is no child as a protagonist, and the environment. It feels like you've taken a vacation in Kerala. That's what the book feels like when you read it. It is so detailed, and it is so full of ambience, and like you feel like you've lived in that environment, and that aspect is what I want to like learn how to do really well. So I keep going back to work where I feel like the illustration is an immersive.
Yeah.
And so I feel like the work of Priya Korean is really growing into that space where the work is such an immersive. There's another book which is, I think it's called Mummy Ko Bukhar, which is written by Loveleen Mishra, and it's it's like in a poem format, and it's a Hindi book, and it's about the mother catching a fever just before her exam. And that book, like as you're reading that book, you feel like you're going it's all set in one house, and you feel like you're going from room to room. You know exactly what the furniture looks like. You like, if someone tells you make a cup of tea in that house, I'll probably be able to do that. That's how well that space is charted out. So that is a really interesting aspect of illustration to me that I want to explore more as well.
Okay. I want to wrap up now, and I think my concluding takeaways from this session was be fun, be humorous, actually write for children and not just overthink about it, and be as authentic as possible in this endeavor. Thank you so much for taking time out today and doing this for us. I hope you all have a good day, and best of luck in your journeys. Thank you.